Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Prima Advanced User Forum. This is Chris with Prima Software US, and I'll be your host today. We're going to be covering the returns process.
Exciting.
We're going to go ahead and walk through the customer returns, supplier returns, as well as some frequently asked questions we get on those topics. Andrea is going to be available in the chat if you have any questions during the presentation. After the presentation, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions for about 15 minutes, as well as this meeting's being recorded, and we'll go ahead and put that up on our YouTube page. But yeah, we'll go ahead and jump right in then. So customer returns. So customer returns are going to be for returning the product from the customer back to your warehouse after it's been delivered. So to get started with that, what we'll do is we're going to go to movements over here on the left and customer returns. If we search this grid here, we're going to see any completed and still in progress customer returns. But to create a new one, what we'll do is we'll go to available lines up here at the top. And as you can see, the company filter is going to be required. So we'll go ahead and type in our company right here, our customer. Fill this in. And now when we hit search, it's going to show us a list of everything that's been delivered, as well as the purchase order it's on, the sales order, all that kind of information, the date. Let's say the customer wants to return, let's say these two items here. So we'll highlight both, and then we'll hit create notes. And then as you can see, it's created a return right here. So we'll go ahead and double click into this line. So this is going to be our customer return. I'll make it a little bit bigger. As you can see, we have an option to put in a reference if we need. We have a drop down for a reason for return. We just put in, if the stock was damaged or the customer purchased the wrong item. Otherwise, there's this add item section here where you can type in your own reason and have that as a new option in the drop down. I'll just select damage for now. Carrier. So carrier is going to be in a situation where you wanted a company like FedEx or UPS to pick up the package for you. This is just an easy way to record that. To create a new carrier in this dropdown, there's just a tick mark in the company details page that we can tick, and it'll add this customer's name to the list, this company's name, I should say. This is just for your recording purposes. As well as if you want to pick them up, you can select the van route to pick them up on, as well as just a standard notes field right here. But the most important thing on this page is going to be our options over here on the right. So this first set of options up here at the top is going to be what happens to the item. So when you pick up the items, if you want them to just the quantity to return to regular stock, it's going to be this option here. If you want to return the products back to the vendor, we'll go ahead and tick this option. And this will also create an outstanding supplier return that we could use for, or that we'll cover next. And then the return to CRS system is going to be for our contract management system in Prima. Not a lot of people use these, so you could probably safely ignore this option here. And then lastly, you have gift to customer if you want to leave the products at the customer's location. And then secondly, the second set of options down here is going to be what happens financially. So you have credit customer, which will obviously create an outstanding sales credit for you guys to complete, or send replacement to customer, which will add the requirements line back in the requirements list for repurchasing. So these these options here are going to be for the entire customer return as a whole. But in a situation where you want different settings for different items on this return, what we could do is, give me one sec. There we go. What we can do is go to the Lines tab up here. And you can see we have the exact same options down at the bottom. So we can select different options per different lines. For today's training, what I'll do is I'll select Return the Vendor for this one and send replacement to customer. And that's about it for customer returns. If you leave the customer return outstanding like it is, you can put this return on a manifest as a stop along the driver's route. So this section over here on the far right is going to be, your standard signature area, signature information, and the manifest number, just like you see on the dispatch note, as well as available lines up here, which will go ahead and go back to the area where we can search for another item to add onto this customer return if we forgot to add an item earlier. If you need to print out the collection note, we can do so here in this last tab. But otherwise, this is looking good. So I'll go ahead and close this window. The best way to keep track of all your outstanding customer returns is going to be in your dashboard. We have a little panel here that'll show you all of the outstanding customer returns. So if we click on that, it's going to be the easiest way to keep track of, making sure we pick up everything and completing some if they haven't been completed already. To add them on a manifest, that's going to be over here in Movements and Manifests. And as you can see, when we hit Available Lines and Search, the return notes here are going to show up exactly the same place as their other dispatch notes. So it's pretty easy to go ahead and add those to your manifest if need be. But then since we'll skip the manifest system for now, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and complete our customer return, which is going to mark the stock as back to our warehouse. So I'll go ahead and complete. And that's that. That's the customer return. I guess this is a good time to remind everybody that Andrea is in the chat. So if you have any questions on customer returns or the supplier returns we're going to cover next, feel free to let her know. Let's see. So after we completed our customer return, since we selected return the vendor on one of the options, we're going to go ahead and open up supplier returns. And if we search on this big grid, we'll see a new outstanding supplier return. Let me make sure I take the right options in here. I did not. So let me make sure I tick the right options. Return the vendor. Yeah, we'll roll with this one instead. All right, back to supplier returns. It's still not coming up. Let's check available lines. There they are. Okay. So it looks like, in this case, to create a new supplier return, since we completed the customer return, it's going to pop up in here in available lines in the supplier return section. So we can just highlight these two items here and go ahead and hit Create Notes. Marked as returnable. Okay. So if you see a message like this, supplier record is not marked as returnable, it means that this item, MMM34026, is not marked as returnable as the option. So let me go ahead and grab that item number one more time. 34026. So if we open up the product record here, and in the vendor section over here, we can see that we have a tick mark that says returnable right here. So we need to go ahead and make sure this tick mark is ticked. That will allow us to return this item. A few hiccups along the way, but that keeps it interesting, right?
Just so people know, that's managed for them, and the majority of items are returnable, set by the vendors in the catalogue.
Right,
so
right.
most of the time they don't have to worry about that. So
yeah, so since the U.S. customer training, we probably made that item manually, but normally you won't have to worry about that. But if you ever run into that that message, you'll know what to do. So back to our supplier return. Here's our new supplier return. So it made the supplier return for the one item we wanted, but it didn't for the other items since we had to change the settings. So in that case, we can use available lines up here to go ahead and search and re-add our item. Maybe the other item was for Ascendant, but in any case, we'll move right ahead. The supplier return here looks pretty similar to the customer return. You have the same reference, carrier, notes section here. The options you have on the right are going to be for credit required from the vendor, which will go ahead and make an outstanding purchase credit for you to complete and send it over to QuickBooks. The other option is replacement item required. So they'll go ahead and put it on the requirements list. If you already selected this option in the customer return, it won't duplicate the item. It'll just keep the one item in the requirements list to purchase. Otherwise, in the return lines, if we had multiple lines here, you can change the option per line as in the customer return, or you could print out the return note here just like anywhere else. Otherwise, hitting complete up here will mark it as completed. So the supplier return does not contact the supplier in any way, so you're going to have to go ahead and return these items through your normal channels. And it'd be good to point out in the dashboard, we have the same option, outstanding vendor return notes here. So I'll go ahead and help you keep track of all your supplier returns. You might notice that this one says vendor returns, and up here it says supplier returns. Those are going to be synonymous. So don't get confused by the different terminology. So if we go back to available lines in supplier returns, maybe not here. Let's check up here. There it is. Okay. So you might notice that this one says, the note says shortages by receipt number 36. So in a receipt note, if you mark shortages incomplete, it will also create an outstanding supplier return for you to manage over here as well. And lastly, if you're in a situation where you want to return an item, but it wasn't from the receipt note and you didn't do a customer return, but you wanted to return an item anyways, in available lines up here, it won't show up everything. The only items that show up in this section here is going to be items that are in the goods returns warehouse. So Prima will automatically move your stock over to the goods returns if you use the customer returns or the receipt note. But in a situation where it doesn't come from one of those two, I'll show you how to create a new return from here. See what items are in here, and we'll pick a different one. So we'll pick UNV 1428. Let's see if we have any stock of that. Here we go. So we have some stock. Perfect. So if you look for the item you want to return, what we'll do is we're going to go to balances over here on the right. And batch records up here at the top, the second tab. Here we go. So on the top of the screen here, we have our current batches. These lines are going to correspond with the purchase orders and the stock takes that you have made for this product here. We can see that originally we purchased 30, but we have 5 remaining. The other were, purchased by customers. So if we select one line at the top, and down here we have different allocations for that 5 stock. We have 3 allocated for an order, and we have 2 in general stock. So let's say we want to return these 2 to the vendor. Maybe they're damaged. Maybe you didn't mean to purchase this item. Whatever the case may be. What we'll do is double click on this line down here. Let's open up this batch line window. If you're in a situation where you don't want to return all 2, maybe it was just 1 you want to return, we'll change the split batch quantity to 1, and we'll change the warehouse to goods inwards and to goods returns. And then from there, all we have to do is save and close. Now you can see there's 3 lines here. We have 3 allocated from before. We have 1 still in general stock, and then we have 1 that says unavailable stock, and the warehouse is in goods returns. So that's what we're looking for. So when we close all this up, and we go back to movements and supplier returns, now since we move that stock into the goods returns area, it will now appear as an available line to go ahead and return to a vendor. Here it is up at the top. And then one more thing I noticed here, let's say you want to return this line, but over here on the right side, purchase order says 0 and there's no vendor attached. So that means most likely this item came from a stock take and not purchased from a purchase order per se. So if we wanted to return this, Prima will let us know that it doesn't know who to return it to because there was no supplier. So from here, Prima will let us choose the supplier if we fill it in at the top. So let's say we wanted to return this item to SP. So we'll fill in SP Richards up here in the vendor search. And now when we highlight and hit create, it'll go ahead and create the supplier return for SP Richards for that item. All right, and that was pretty much everything I had for you guys. So we covered customer returns, supplier returns, as well as some helpful tips on how to navigate those 2. We'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I think I muted everybody at the start, but feel free to unmute yourselves and we'll get started.
Just while everyone's doing that, Chris, what's the default in customer returns when you go in? I think most people will use the default, won't they? I would imagine.
The default settings?
Yeah, so when they create a customer return.
Let's create a new one. So it looks like the default setting is going to be return the vendor, which will go ahead and create that supplier return for you as well, and credit customer.
Okay, I think that was done by suggestions from the customers that was the most used default.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that proves, we could put a system key in to change that, but everyone seems to be happy with that. But they're the sort of improvements we can make if required.
Okay.
Did have a bit of feedback on the chat, Steve, where Jeff and Jonathan said returns option would be great, where the customer can select their order and express it in, sorry,
On the store, you
request
mean?
it on the store to select
Yeah,
your
that's in
order.
our roadmap, actually. That's going to be there in the next couple of months. So
Great,
that's
there you go.
very high up on our roadmap at the moment, yeah.
Great stuff. And then Chris, Jonathan's just asked, can you see the purchase date when you select the item? Or
Yeah, for the customer return, if we go to available lines, here to create a new one.
There's actually a full
Search.
screen option there. So
Oh, that's right. Yeah, like Steve said, we'll go full screen up here. You can see the sales order date and the delivery date, or the purchase order date if you want to go by that.
yeah, there you go. So if you do limit your returns to 30 days, then you can check it on here before you actually do the return. That's good.
Yeah, and it might be helpful to point out that we can rearrange these columns if you want. You can just rearrange the maybe the sales order date in front and center, and then you would just right click and save settings so it's that way next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Chris Deadman, I think, was asking about shortages. So I know that Chris Prima said you can see that when you go into the returns, you can see if something was shorted, but that is actually done from the return screen. So I don't know if you can just open a return there, Chris, just to show. If you open up an outstanding return, there is a shortage option on each line, and if you choose, if you go into the receipts, Chris,
Oh, and the receipt, right?
you can
Right.
just quickly show Chris where that is.
Yeah. So in your outstanding receipt notes, we'll go full screen, and then in the lines tab over here, might have to scroll a little bit to the right, but we can see quantity ordered, quantity confirmed, and if you do have a shortage, it would change down here into quantity received. In this case, maybe it's 0 since there's only one to purchase, but if you ordered 2, we could return 1. If we go ahead and save that, you can see the shortage quantity change to 1, and then you also have the option to change the shortage action to return, credit, and reorder, which will go ahead and create that supplier return for you.
Great. Anybody else got any questions? I think I've answered. If I haven't answered them on the chat, then let us know.
I see there was a question about credit cards. We haven't done credits back to a credit card yet, but we're just coming to the end of the current phase. So I've not really thought about that, but we'll plan that. It's not. I don't think it's a big job, so we can get that pretty soon. Hopefully in the next few weeks. Yeah. It's just a different option on the within the API. So yeah, it shouldn't be a big thing at all.
Great. I think these forums are really good to get feedback from everybody using Prima. While Steve's on the phone, can let you know what's in the roadmap. So, oh, sorry, Chris has asked, what if the vendor sends the incorrect product? So, well, our Chris did show if you get the incorrect product, you could do the customer return, which generates the vendor return.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could mark it as goods returned in the product.
Yeah, and then
do it.
When it's in the requirements list, it should be easy to go ahead and change that to a different product.
Yeah, you can either completely return it, or you can do the replacement, like you say, and change it to an alternative. Once it's back on requirements, you could double click into it and choose a different alternative product, or you could completely delete it off the order and put a new product altogether. Will that show on the return slip? Oh, damaged. Will damage show on the return slip? Yeah, if you print it out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can add. All those fields can be added onto your notes. So I think the status is there as default.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason for return, yeah, that will print out.
Make sure that says damaged. Take a look at the
I mean,
report.
the reports are totally customizable. So I think.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that, of course, is on the manifest as well. I think, as in the notes section. Yeah.
Let's double check.
Issues without him delivering the replacement but not picking up the wrong active item. Is that a training issue?
On yours, Christy, we'll give you a call. We'll have to have a look to see when you said you've had issues not picking up the other item.
I think it's marked as for. Well, you should mark it as for replacement so that it's on the driver's notes. But yeah, as you say, it's a process, isn't it, of doing it the best way.
Yeah.
When we issue a return item, the return slip is showing our drivers need to pick up the item that was said to have been sent.
I think we have had a call on that before, Chris and Christy, where you've put the replacement, but it doesn't actually, the action on the return doesn't happen until you press complete. So that might be what's happening there. We can definitely give you guys a call after the session and we can go through that.
You're saying, Andrea, there it doesn't update the status of what was actually needs picking up until it's completed.
Yeah, that might be what's what they're referring to there, because if you put something on the app, it has to be outstanding. So they can put the return on the app, but the action of putting the replacement onto requirements doesn't happen until you press complete. So until the driver's picked it up, the replacement wouldn't go back on.
Okay.
So that's good feedback.
All right. It looks like that could do with
Tweaking.
It's quite quite complex, but yeah, it's good feedback.
Great. Any other questions, or if anybody wants us to give you a call about individual scenarios, just let us know.
That's good. I learned something as usual.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks very much. Bye all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.